Hello and welcome. My name is Teacher Jade, and welcome to the first module of this course. This class is all about government and politics. We are mainly going to focus on government in the United States. However, every country has some type of government, no matter what it's called, but it's a way that people organize and ensure that there's some law and just in their communities. We're also going to discuss politics and everything that you need to know about politics. So when you're making your own decisions about politics and what's going on in your communities, you're informed and you understand the process. So each lesson, there will be exercises, there will be activities, there will be assignments. And although this is a self-paced class, and these assignments are optional, I am still going to highly encourage and recommend that you complete them. Any work that you submit to me is also going to receive feedback. So sit back, listen, learn, and complete these assignments. And at any point, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. An important element of understanding government is also understanding civics. So, civics provides us with the knowledge needed to understand how our government operates and how political decisions affect our lives. It also helps us recognize the importance of participating in the democratic process, whether through voting, advocacy, or community involvement. So, the basic definitions of civics, we're studying the rights and the duties of citizenship, understanding the workings of government and political systems, having knowledge about the structure and functions of government, and also comprehending the principles that underpin the democratic societies, and then having awareness of the responsibilities as a citizen in maintaining and improving our communities and nations. Okay, I want you to listen very closely to the different government structures. So we have a democracy, and a democracy is a form of government where people hold the power. Citizens have the right to vote for their leaders and influence decisions through fair and free elections. Everyone has a say in how the government is run, either directly or through their elected representatives. That's the definition of a democracy. We also have a monarchy. And a monarchy is a form of government where a single person, usually called a king or a queen, rule the country. The position is inherited, meaning it's passed down through family lines. Monarchs may have varying degrees of power, but for the most part, they have the most significance in political influence. There's also something called an absolute monarchy. And this is where the king and queen have complete control over government and policies. There are no checks or balances on their power, meaning they can make laws and decisions without needing approval from other branches of government or the citizens. And then we have a dictatorship. And a dictatorship is a form of government where a single person or a small group holds all the power, often without the consent of the people. Dictators typically come to power through force or manipulation and maintain control through intimidation, censorship, and limiting political freedoms. Citizens have little to no influence over government decisions. Now, if you need to hear those definitions again, pause and rewind. It's time to practice. Read each one of these scenarios and determine what type of government is being described. Which ones did you get right? Okay, now focusing on the US and how our democracy is set up and our government is set up, we have local, state, and national governments. This will be important to remember and to understand as well, because we will focus on some of this a little bit later. But with the local government, this refers to the administrations of towns, cities, counties, and districts. The functions, they handle community needs like policing, fire services, local road maintenance, public schools, and zoning regulations. Some examples would be your city councils, your mayors, and your county boards. Now, at the state level, the state government is organized into individual states within a country. 50 nifty United States, that's us. And then the functions, they manage statewide issues such as education policies, transportation infrastructure, healthcare regulations, and law enforcement. These are going to be your governors, the state legislatures, and state courts. And then we have the national government, which is also known as the federal government, and it governs the entire country. These functions, they handle national defense, foreign policy, federal taxes, interstate commerce, and constitutional rights. The examples would be the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. Now, as a mini assignment, you can look up your local city council representatives. You can look up who your government is. This is really important to know. And of course, on the national level, the president. So one thing I absolutely want to point out, everything that I just mentioned, this is all factual information, but you will be coming up with your own opinions about a lot of things like different policies, different laws. These are going to be things that you're going to want to consider, especially when we start discussing politics. So I don't want you to just take my word for it, except for the stuff I just mentioned, because this is all factual. But when it comes to making your own informed opinions about current events, you need to be able to know what information to look for. So, you're going to follow reliable news sources. So, regularly read or watch news from credible sources. Social media is not the answer. Of course, there are websites and social media platforms that are specifically covered by politicians and journalists, but even they will be biased and skewed. So you want to make sure you're looking for credible sources, people who actually know what they're speaking on, and stay updated on current events and issues, and always look at different perspectives. You also want to verify your information. So check facts and cross-reference news from multiple sources to avoid misinformation. Here are some reasons why it's so important to be an informed citizen. You want to know your rights. And so you want to be aware of your constitutional rights and legal protections. And you also want to understand your own responsibilities. So learn about civic duties such as voting and jury duty when you're old enough to do that. And then community involvement such as volunteering. So I just mentioned the different levels of government. We have local, state, and national. And I also mentioned some of the different roles that politicians have in those roles, such as mayors and governors and the president. And each one of them have a different election cycle. So there will be a worksheet that's posted in the classroom that goes over those for you. I'm not going to bore you to tears by reading all of that information to you, but I do expect you to look at the information that's going to be posted in the classroom. The more you understand about how the electoral system works, the more you become informed citizen. And to put this into perspective, because being a part of a community and understanding civics and participating in government and politics doesn't just end at voting. So, as I mentioned, your responsibilities. When you know local laws such as traffic rules, this helps individuals avoid legal trouble. So, most places you can't cross in the middle of the street. There are laws that prohibit you from doing so. These are things that you want to be aware of. In some states, if you aren't driving yet, in some states, you can turn on right. Like you can turn right at a red light. Let me rephrase that. When you're turning right at a red light, that is perfectly legal as long as you come to a complete stop, look both ways, and there's no traffic coming. But in other states, this is illegal. So even when you travel across cities and states, you want to be aware of laws. So that's one thing. Driving. That is a civic duty, knowing what those local laws are. Also, volunteering. If you volunteer at a local food bank, you can learn about social issues and the impact of how civic engagement and improving community well being can help make your community better. For this week's mini assignment, I want you to find a local issue. So something within your city. It could also be within like your community or your neighborhood. And then find a news article related to that issue. Evaluate that news and information critically. So consider any biases or any underlying motives. And I'll give you a real life example. In my neighborhood, there's we get a newsletter, and somebody wrote in and they were complaining about the local library because in our library there's this huge structure in the children's area, and there was a parent who was complaining about children climbing on this structure. And it's my favorite library, so I responded back and they end up publishing my response. But that was showing both our biases. So somebody really wants to know about this neighborhood library, If they read the first person's response about the structure, they might think that this is an awful place to take your children and that the librarians are rude. But if you read mine, and of course I'm showing my bias, you would think it's the most spectacular, wonderful library out there. And you'd understand that that structure there is for decorative purposes. And there's signs that say don't climb on it. And there's a park that people can go play at. So the bias, and then underlying motives. I'm trying to get more people to come to this library, but maybe the other person didn't want more people to go to the library because they want it all to themselves. Who knows? So think about those things. Question any assumptions that are made. Is what you're reading based on facts, or is it based on somebody's personal opinions? And then challenge your own assumptions and be open to new information and viewpoints, which can sometimes be challenging. Try to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand where they're coming from, even if it doesn't make sense to you. Being able to be open is the part that helps you become a critical thinker. So make sure you go to the classroom, complete the reading. There will also be an interactive quiz that you're going to complete and the mini assignment. If you have any questions, again, please reach out and let me know.